Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Percoco, and I'm the Director of Transfers, Refunds, and Enrollments at the MTRS. And I'll be presenting today's webcast on the implementation of R Plus election changes for employers. This is the third and final employer webcast that we'll have during the window of this election. So we'll cover a lot of the same material that we covered in the previous webcasts, as well as some important updates related to rate changes. I can't believe we're almost at the end of this election period. In some regards, it's been a long time. Feel like it's been forever, but in other at other points, it feels like it was just yesterday that it just started. So we've made a lot of great progress through this project so far, and we could not have gone to this point without you and all of your help. So it's much appreciated, all of the efforts that you've provided throughout this whole process. So with that being said, let's get underway because we have a lot of important material to cover today. So today's webcast is broken into 5 different parts. Part 1, the need for Chapter 134 of the Acts of 2022. Then we have Part 2, the special election that is going on right now. Part 3, the new election process, and that's for transfers received on or after 7/1/2022. Part 4, which is the elimination of the election. And then Part 5, to go over the resources we have for both employers and members on our website. And one important note about this webcast is that we have people in the other room to answer questions live throughout this presentation. So if you have questions, you can ask through the chat. However, if you can, wait until the end of each section, just because we cover a lot of material and we might answer your question before you even get to ask it. So Part 1, the need for Chapter 134 of the Acts of 2022. A lot of people don't know what R plus is, so we'll go over the benefits really quick just so you can understand why this is so important. So R plus is an enhanced retirement benefit, and being a public employee in the state of Massachusetts, we have defined benefit plans versus a defined contribution plan, which is where you would contribute to a 401k. You ride the market your whole career, and then when you retire, that's just what you end up for your retirement. A defined benefit plan, which we all have as public employees, would be a guaranteed benefit for the rest of your life, regardless of what you contribute to the system. When someone retires, that benefit is based off of 3 factors. You have your age, your years of service, and then a salary average. So to make things simple, if you have a member that has a salary average of $100,000 and they reach the maximum benefit of 80%, that's the highest they can get. You can't go higher than 80%. That person will get an annual pension of $80,000 to the rest of your life. So what does R plus do? It gets you to that 80% a little bit faster than a regular retirement would. Once someone hits 30 years of service, and this is for a tier 1 member, that percentage that you get increases by 12%. And then every year after that, it increases by another 2%. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the percentage charts, definitely do that. We have a link within this PowerPoint, which will also be posted to the website. You'll be able to download this later on today. Go look at those percentage charts, just because if you are in Retirement Plus, or even with a regular retirement, you can get a sense of where you would end up at the time of retirement. One important thing is that a member has to be eligible to participate or eligible to receive the benefit once they are participating in Retirement Plus. And one of the eligibility factors is that the person has to have 30 years of service when they retire. So that's at least 30 years of service, and then 20 have to be with the MTRS, so that's MTRS membership service, or with the Boston Retirement System as a teacher. That will count towards the 20-year service requirement. And then the other 10 can be from another retirement system or through a service purchase. So I realize there might be a lot of new payroll officers on the webcast today. And as you can see here by looking at this rate chart, the rate system in Massachusetts can be pretty complicated. However, that's why we're here today to break things down and help it make a little bit more sense for you. So if you start all the way down at the bottom and look at the middle column for people not participating in Retirement Plus, anyone who established public membership before January 1st of 75 would be required to contribute 5% of their earnings to the system. Then if you go up a row, if someone established service between January 1st of 75 and December 31st of 78, that person would be required to contribute 7% on their earnings. And one important thing to know here is that once you establish your service within these windows of time, you are grandfathered in at that rate. So it's not like if you start before 75 and then you make it, you continue to work between 75 and 78, that your rate would increase to 7%. That's not how it works. You would still be at the 5%. So it's important to just remember that it's when someone establishes their public service within that window of time. Then we move up to between January 1st of 79 through December 31st of 83. This is where things get a little complicated with the rate structure in Massachusetts. You can see here that there's a 7% plus an additional 2% on earnings over $30,000 a year. And people refer to that as the +2 or the and2 or 7 plus 2. And 7 plus 2 equals 9, but not in this situation right here because it's only 2% on earnings over $30,000 a year, where the 7% is on all of the earnings. Then we move up to between January 1st of 84 through June 30th of 96. These people would be in at 8 plus 2, or 8% on all of their earnings, and then 2% on an additional, or 2% taken on earnings over $30,000 a year. Then you get to between July 1st of 96 through June 30th of 2001, and people who established their membership within that time period are 9 plus 2, or 9% on all of their earnings, and then an additional 2% on earnings over $30,000 a year. And now this is where things get really complicated because 9 plus 2 everywhere else equals 11. But now that you're a little bit more familiar with the way this is, it is not a flat 11% on all of their earnings because that 2% isn't on everything. It's only on earnings over $30,000 a year. Then we move up to July 1st of 2001 through April 1st of 2012. If anyone established public membership anywhere in Massachusetts, their rate would be that 9 plus 2 amount. That is the same as in the row below that. However, the only difference between this row and the one below that is that if someone established service with the MTRS or Boston on or after July 1st of 2001, and that's Boston as a teacher, they are mandated to contribute at 11%, and that's that rate on the right participating in R+. So for example, I actually established service within that window there, so I'm a 9 plus 2 member. But if someone established their membership with the MTRS or Boston the same exact day as me, they would be in at 11%, and that's just what their rate would be. Then we move up. There was another pension reform in Massachusetts, and on or after, if someone established membership on or after April 2nd, 2012, and they're not participating in R+, they would be in at that 9 plus 2 rate. However, after 30 years of service, the rate would decrease by 3%. So that person would go down to 6 plus 2, and that's 6% on all earnings and then 2% on any earnings over $30,000 a year. And then the same with someone who establishes service credit with the MTRS or Boston as a teacher. They would start in at 11%, and then after 30 years, it would decrease by 3% to a flat 8%, and there's no additional 2% for that person. And these people are classified as Tier 2 members. Anyone who established service credit before that date is classified as a Tier 1 member. So the difference between the 11 and the 9 plus 2, and we just kind of went over that on the last slide, but it's important to really go over this in a little bit more detail just because it's so confusing. So the flat rate for R plus is a flat 11% on all gross earnings. That's on everything. And then the lower rate, the non-R plus rate, 9% with an additional 2% taken on earnings over $30,000 a year, is not the same as 11%. So it's commonly referred to as 9 plus 2 or 9 and 2. People hear the word plus, they think it's retirement plus or R plus. They think it's retirement plus, and that's not the case. And 9 plus 2 does not equal 11% for R plus. So the monetary difference per year is $600 a year, and that's just the way the math works out for anyone, regardless of what they make, as long as the salary is over $30,000 a year. So if you don't know how to calculate the additional 2%, or you still want some more information on it, I highly suggest going to our website, and we give a detailed breakdown on how to calculate that additional 2%, and why it doesn't equal that, or why 9 plus 2 doesn't equal that 9 plus 2, or 9 plus 2 does not equal the 11%. So now we'll discuss the need for this new law for Retirement Plus. So as of 7/1/2001, all new MTRS members are mandated into R plus, except for those transferring into the MTRS from one of the other 103 retirement systems. When people started, it's tough for us to know if someone ever had prior public service. And I would imagine it's probably tough on your end too. And some people may be easy because they may have started as a para in your district. They're already set up at a lower rate. But if you get someone from a newer or from another school district, or someone who hasn't taught or worked in the public in the past, it's hard to know whether or not that person did have prior membership. So when it came to all new people starting with us on or after 2001, we instructed employers to withhold 11% for all these new hires, until people would transfer into the system or have to make an R plus election. Because one, we wouldn't know if people had prior public service, so we wouldn't know to tell you to take a lower rate. And we're all not mind readers, so we would have to wait for people to complete their enrollments and let us know that they had funds on account at another board. So because of that, transfers requested don't happen in a timely manner, just because things take time. For years and years, I worked in employer services and worked with many of you, and I know that it's hard to get people to complete their enrollment. People don't listen. And while a good majority of people do what they're supposed to do, there are those people that just, they don't listen to you when you ask them to do something. So MTRS's regulation would provide 180 days from the date that we receive the transfer from the other system, to give this person an opportunity to either elect into Retirement Plus or keep that lower rate that they established at another retirement system. So one of the issues is that because people had 11% withheld from their pay, they thought that they were automatically in Retirement Plus because they were already contributing at the rate that they needed to for Retirement Plus. Um, so because transfers didn't occur for years after they established membership, and we talked about those untimely enrollments, or people don't even notify the MTRS that they have funds on account at another system because they don't know. And we find out years down the road, and because they've been contributing at that 11% for years, they just automatically think that they're in and that they don't have to do anything. So once the MTRS received these transfers, they had 180 days to elect in. We would send 3 notices to these members, 3 letters in the mail. And if members did not respond, it counted as a no election. So members would default out. And people would refer to this as the MTRS kicking people out of Retirement Plus, which we're not kicking people out of the program. It's just we're following the way the law is written in our regulation and giving people that chance to make an election to stay in at 11 or retain that lower rate, because R plus doesn't make sense for everyone. If we didn't receive a response, they would just default out of the program. So members would get upset when they would apply for retirement. They'd find out that they're not in R plus, or if we sent a rate change, letting the district know that they should be at a lower rate, people would be upset because they thought they were in, but in fact that they weren't. Or at the end of our old process, we would send an appeals letter for members to appeal our decision of them defaulting out and us determining they're not in Retirement Plus. And due to all these factors or all these situations, there were hundreds and hundreds of appeals to go back into Retirement Plus. So without this law change, year after year, the number of members that would be affected would continue to grow because people don't respond, or a lot of people don't respond to the things that we send them in the mail, therefore defaulting out of the program. So this would grow without this legislative action. And I'm very happy that that's happened because it's fixed a problem that we've had in the system for a long time. So I know we just covered a lot of material. So now we'll just take a quick Q&A section if you have any questions on anything we covered in the previous section.
Hi, Dave. We do not have any questions in the chat just yet.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll move on to part 2, the special election that's going on right now. So members eligible for the election. So the new law provides a final one-time opportunity to participate in the R Plus program only for specific members. So here we can see the person had to establish membership with the MTRS or Boston between July 1st of 2001 and June 30th of 2022. So if you think of that window of time, someone had to establish membership within that period of time. And this is important in the next bullet. And they transferred into the MTRS from one of the other 103 mass retirement systems between July 1st, 2001 and June 30th, 2022. So it's that same window of time. We had to receive a transfer from another system. And the person did not yet submit an election. So they didn't respond to those 3 notices within that 21-year period. They are eligible to make a one-time election to participate in Retirement Plus if they would like to. So people that hadn't responded to our notices, they're lucky because they have another one-time chance to elect into the program. People that are not eligible for this election are people that were members prior to 7/1/2001. And that's because they were part of the original election in 2001. And I know throughout this process, over the last several months, there have been a lot of people that think that they should receive another election. Um, they've been emailing us asking for replacement ballots, thinking that they're part of the election. However, they're not, because we find that they had their one-time opportunity back in 2001. And I know that some members think that this is unfair. However, they're really apples and oranges. They're not the same election. They're two completely different processes. There was a whole marketing campaign in 2001. So it is not the same as this. And those people do not get another chance through the special election. So one important thing to know is that members who are part of the special election and they receive a packet, they are not in Retirement Plus. So the reason why they're part of this is because they have to make an election. They're not in unless they elect to be in. Um, so even if the person has been contributing at 11% the entire time, they are not in Retirement Plus. And throughout this whole process, and we'll go over the details a little later on, but we've emailed people several times. We've sent out a lot of correspondence letting them know that even though they could have been contributing at 11%, they're still not in Retirement Plus. They have to make an election. And most recently, I think a couple weeks ago, a member emailed us stating that that she thought she was in. She's been at 11% the whole time, but she's not until she makes an election. So it's really important that people make the election during this window, because they're not going to get another opportunity after this. So our instructions, as well as yours, is that if a member does not respond to the election, they will not be in R+, even if they've been at 11% for the last 21 years. They need to respond during this election. So if you have a chance, you and members can review the eligibility criteria and more on our R+ Resource Center, which is located on our homepage, or on the homepage of our website. So the status of the election right now. So back on January 11th, and then again on March 31st, our election vendor, Yes Elections, mailed ballots to everyone that we determined should have received an election. And then on April 13th and May 8th, our vendor was able to email elections or election ballots to all of our eligible members. And I'd like to take a moment to just thank all of you that have provided us with email addresses throughout this whole process. Because I believe at the end of, or at the beginning of the election, I think we were missing something like 900 emails for active members. And with all of your efforts, I think we were able to get that number down to about 40 active members that didn't have an email address in the system. So because of you, we were able to email ballots to pretty much all of the members or active members that are part of the special election. So with that being said, we're still in the window, and our vendor is going to be sending more credential emails. So there'll be 3 more going out. Another one on June 5th, June 26th, which is the Monday before the election deadline, and then again on Friday, June 30th, which is the last day of the election. Here is a sample ballot that people would have received back in January and March. And just a couple important things to point out with this is that this is a sample. People should not be photocopying these. There's a special barcode. It's not populated on the screen, but there's a special election code and a PIN. So everyone has their own unique information to be able to make their election. So the vendor knows that it's that person to make the election. So if you see this ballot, if someone submits it to you, you should not be seeing these because these should be going directly to our vendor. So if someone has submitted this to you, it's really important to give it back to them and tell them that they need to submit it to the MTRS. They can conveniently make their election online, and they'll get a confirmation right away after they make the election. And I've heard from members and then seeing samples from our vendor. It's not like someone can pick a choice by accident and then submit it. There are processes in place where they'd have to confirm the election that they're making. So it's really nice to make it online so they can have that confirmation. So again, if you see this ballot, don't accept it. Tell them that they have to send it directly to us. So the status so far, and this is as of yesterday, you can see total votes are 2,980. So we've made a lot of good progress during this election. And if you look at the stats from just a couple months ago, you can see that the people that have voted have doubled. And that is pretty impressive because, you would expect a spike at the beginning, which we did, but then throughout this process, and again, largely due to the help that you've given us reaching out to these employees, providing us with email addresses, we're almost at 3,000 members that have made an election. So a lot of great progress made from everyone. So steps for a successful implementation of the R+ special election. A lot of communication has gone out to both employers and members. In fact, you're probably getting sick of all the emails that we're sending you, but that's a good thing because it means that you're seeing them. So the member communications that have gone out, an email went to all MTRS members back on October 7th, 2022, just letting people know that there was an election that was going to be happening. Then at the end of October, we targeted everyone that was supposed to be, or everyone part of the special election. And with that, we had some bounce backs on emails that were undeliverable. So then what we did was we took all of those people that had emails that bounced back and then included them with members that we didn't have an email for. And we sent a letter to all of those members back in November, just letting them know that they would be receiving a ballot and that they're part of the special election. Then the employer R+ broadcasts went out on September 1st, October 31st, and November 28th. Then once the election started, we sent an email to each superintendent with a list of all the people that were eligible within their district to let them know that these people were part of the special election. Then on March 20th, we were able to email superintendents with an updated list of people that hadn't made an election yet, and we were able to CC a bunch of payroll contacts on there. These are the people that we would use for rate changes or contact for rate changes. Then most recently, just last week, we sent another email out to superintendents and CC payroll staff along with assigned employer services representatives of an entire roster of people within the district that included a first round of rate changes. So it gave the person's election and then what their rate should have been in the system. And we'll show you an example of that. I think it's on the next slide. And then we've also done a lot of webinars or webcasts where we had or invited all of our eligible members. We had one on February 23rd, April 4th, and then the last one on May 10th. And all of those recordings are posted online, so if someone missed it, they can go back and watch it. My son already thinks that I'm a YouTube star because I've been on these webcasts now So if you can, direct them to these videos. There's a lot of important information on them. So next, employer steps. So if your employees have any questions, feel free to send them to the MTRS and promote them, or promote the R Plus Resource Center, because there's a lot of good information on there. Remind members that they have to respond to the election. They have to do it before Friday, June 30th of this year, because after that, they will not get another chance to elect into the program. Review the list of eligible employees and just update us on any changes that have been made to the list. I know that there are times where there are employees that are no longer working there, and that is because their events just need to be updated on the roster screen in My TRS to show that they're no longer working at the district. And only make changes that we ask you to make. Please don't make any rate changes based on the member's request. Just because it's important we all stay on the same page, and there are members there that are not part of this election, and they might ask you to change their rate to 11%, thinking that they're in Retirement Plus, but that's not the case. So just wait for us to send the notification. So that the last email that we sent out did have rate changes for everyone that has made an election, and I believe that is as of May 5th. Anyone that made an election as of May 5th. So if there are people on there that say that they still need to make an election, but they'll tell you that they already made an election, it's probably because they made the election after May 5th. So they'll be included on the next round that we send to employers after the election. Here is a sample spreadsheet of what we sent to each district. So we have the district code, the school's name, first and last name, their final R Plus election. So whether or not they're participating or not participating. And then you can see there in red if they didn't provide a response yet. The date of their final election, whether or not a rate change is needed for that person, a date that we requested the rate change, just because when we send these lists again in the future, we'll be able to identify the people that have already been people we already notified you about. So then you wouldn't have to worry about making that person's change on the next payroll. You can focus on the next round that we send. Then we have the person's correct rate. So you can see there, people that are participating or have elected to participate, the correct rate should be 11%. And then over in the next column, we have the latest rate released to the account. And you can see at 9%, or someone might have had 11%. And just one point of clarification on this list, and this is my error, is if someone is listed as 9, it's implied that it's 9 plus 2. It's that lower rate of 9 plus 2. So if you see 9, it should be that 9 plus 2 rate. However, the most important thing is that for someone that makes the election, you should change it to that correct rate that's listed there in that column. Another point of clarification is that the latest rate released to the account is the last posted payroll to that person's account. So it is possible that you might have someone within your district where they might not have the latest rate match what is listed on the spreadsheet, because the latest rate released to their account could be from a former school district. So if you have a situation where the person's latest rate released to the account does not match, please let us know, and that'll help us determine whether or not they need a rate change. So definitely take a look at the list that we sent. Again, those went back out on the 18th. So if you have a chance, check that list, or if you haven't seen it, ask your superintendent or anyone in the payroll or HR department could have possibly gotten the list. Then we have the person's email address. if it's blank, if you can, please provide the email. There shouldn't be a lot. Like I said, I think there's only like 40 over 385 school districts. So again, great job on getting us those email addresses. And if you can, just send us over emails that are missing from your list. So post-election steps. So after 6/30/2023, we're probably going to have to let the dust settle a little bit, wait for paper ballots that might trickle in after the deadline. But we'll have to determine who's at 11%, who hasn't responded to the election, and we'll request for final rate changes to be done at some point in either July or August. It'd probably be closer to the end of July or August. And once those changes happen, we'll have to wait until those rate changes post through payroll before we can do anything to those members' accounts. So there are going to be people in different categories. We're going to be able to resolve cases at different times depending on if a rate change was needed, how fast payroll's posted, and how fast the correct rate can be posted to the member's account. But if we find that someone has elected to participate, they've always been at 11%, we'll simply just send them an email confirming that they've always been at 11 and they don't owe any additional money. If we find that a member has elected to participate and has not paid at 11% during part or all of their MTRS service, we'll have to send them an invoice with installment options for greater than $1,000. If a member elects to opt out of R+ and they have paid at 11% during any or part of their MTRS service, they'll receive a refund of the additional contributions between that 11% and whatever that lower rate is that they established membership at. And again, everyone's situation is different, so refunds, invoices, it could be a while before they are sent out to members. We have just about 8,000 members as part of this election, and we're anticipating that it could take at least 6 months after the end of the election period, so the end of the calendar year, really, to complete the steps on the previous slide. And in a lot of cases, it could take longer than 6 months. It could be closer to a year, depending on how long it can take payroll to get posted to members' accounts. People retiring, members retiring, they shouldn't delay filing a retirement application because of this election. If they want to retire, at this point, they should have already submitted their application. There could be some stragglers at the closer to the end of the school year, but it should not delay them from submitting an application. And those people should absolutely still submit an election, just so we know how to handle their account and what their correct rate should be. So, we're in this together. We've done a lot of work with each other, and consistent messaging is key. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. One thing I just remembered that I wanted to mention is that I think an email went out from one of the unions from a district or two, and the message was that if a member transferred from district to district, not from another retirement system to the MTRS, but from one district to another, that they would be part of the special election. And that is not the case, because members move from district to district all the time. And this is really people transferring from another system to the MTRS within that 21-year window that we discussed earlier. So again, consistent messaging is the key, and that's why we're here to have this webcast, to dispel rumors and get the truth out there, just in case wrong information is being spread out there. So with that being said, does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Dave, we do have a couple in the chat. The first one is, we received a spreadsheet from your office last week to verify an update. Do these rates need to be updated for our current pay date? We have to process these rate changes through our internal workflow process in our HRIS system.
Sure, yeah. So if you could process it on the next available payroll that you have access to, please change them on that next payroll. So if you have to go through that process, that's fine. And if you can't get it for, if you're close to processing a payroll and you don't think you can get it done for this next payroll, then definitely do it for the next payroll for that rate change.
Great, thank you. Next question, will we be receiving copies of the employees' election for their and our records?
That is another great question. And we actually don't have copies of the ballots, at least just yet. And it's going to be tricky because a lot of these people, as you've seen on the previous slide, have made elections online. And there's actually not a ballot um, for someone that makes an election online. It was just the website. So we'll have to think of a way for you to get that information in that employee's um, in their personnel folder. I don't know what we'll do just yet, but if you are interested in receiving a confirmation, let us know, and maybe we can maybe CC you on an email that we're going to be sending to members in the next couple of weeks just to confirm their election. But definitely reach out to us if you need that confirmation.
Great. One more. For those who are electing into R Plus who haven't been at 11%, how do they go about paying the percentage difference? And is there a deadline for that?
Sure. So once we determine what the final amount is that people would owe, we will be sending them invoices. And there's a few different payment options. If it's over $1,000, they can elect into a 5-year installment plan where they just make equal payments over the course of 5 years, and that includes interest. And the interest rate is half of the actuarial interest rate, which is currently 7%. So 3.5% interest on their invoice. And that interest doesn't start to accrue until 90 days after we send out the invoice. So for people that are waiting for invoices, they might get nervous that interest is accruing, but that's not the case. It'll only start accruing once we send out that or 90 days after we send out that invoice. One important thing, and we mentioned this in the member webinars and we mentioned it in previous employer webinars, is that if people are nervous they don't have enough money, they can set up a 403B, start to contribute to it, and then by the time the invoices go out, there's a chance that they might have accrued enough money in that pre-tax account to be able to roll over, or if they're still actively contributing to that retirement fund, a trust-to-trust transfer to pay for some or all of their invoice. So that option is available in case people need to do that. And then if people can pay in full, they can write a check to us. That's also another option.
Great. One last question for now. Are districts issuing refunds or is the MTRS?
We will be calculating the refunds, and the IRS requires us to process the refund as a credit through payroll. So we'll be notifying you and asking if you can do the adjustments through payroll. However, I know that there are cases where it's not feasible for employers to do that, or the refund amount is larger than what their annual contribution amount is, which would result in a negative on their W-2. And we can't have that just because it'll cause some issues. And in those situations where it can't be done through payroll, the MTRS will issue the check directly to the member. And one thing I just wanted to mention, just in case anyone's wondering, and also in addition to the last answer, is that these contributions cannot be made up through payroll. So if someone has an invoice, they can't pay it back through installments through payroll. It's just something that we can't do right now. So just in case anyone asked, unfortunately, we can't have them done pre-tax through payroll. However, when it comes to returning the money, because it's one lump sum, it can be done in one adjustment if feasible.
Okay, sorry, one more question for now. Would the employee enrolling online receive a confirmation that they could print?
The employee, yes, they should have a confirmation that they can print from the website. I know some people have taken screenshots from their phone, or they've taken a picture of the screen with their phone, or they've printed the confirmation screen. So yeah, they have the ability to do that for their own records.
Great, that's all the questions for now.
Thanks. Okay, so we're moving on to part 3, the new election process for transfers received on or after 7/1/2022 with membership service prior to 7/1 of 22. So the law was huge in giving people another one-time chance to elect into R+ if they missed out on their opportunity in the past. But it also corrects a problem that we've had in the system for a number of years. So with that new law, there is now an opt-out provision. So in the past, people would have to elect, and if they didn't respond, they would be defaulted out. But now we have this opt-out provision where if they don't respond, basically they're in. Members enrolled in the MTRS with service in another retirement system prior to 7/1/2022 who have service transferred into the MTRS on or after 7/1/2022, they must now opt out of Retirement Plus. So 180 days from the date the MTRS receives the transfer, the opt-out the opt-in provision has been eliminated. So if people fail to submit an election within that 180 days from receiving that election, they're defaulted into Retirement Plus instead of defaulting out. So I'll give you a quick example. Let's say I established service credit well before 2022. I've been a public employee, let's just say, for 15 years, and now I become a member of the MTRS. My transfer would come to the MTRS now because it's after 7/1/2022. If I don't respond to that election within that 180-day window, I am defaulted into Retirement Plus. I have to contribute 11%. If I were to work and I didn't meet the requirements for R Plus at the time of retirement, so that 30-year service requirement, people in this situation will receive a refund of the additional contributions taken at 11%. It would be the difference between that 11 and whatever that lower rate is or was established from the other retirement system. So people would get a refund on those contributions that default into the program. So please continue to take 11% for all of your newly hired employees. However, when you register them in MyTRS, if you go to the roster screen, you can see the rate that should be withheld for that person. So in a lot of cases, it's going to be 11%, but you're going to hire some people that may have already made an R+ election in the past, or are at a lower rate, and you'll have to start taking that lower rate when they first start. So definitely go to the roster screen in MyTRS and just confirm what rate should be taken for that employee. And if you ever have questions on what rate should be taken, you can always reach out to your assigned service rep and they can help you when it comes to making that decision. However, all of that information is online in the employer self-service module of MyTRS. Here is a sample opt-out participation form. So you can see that it's different than our old R plus election form, and it was designed in a way so for us internally, we could easily distinguish the difference between this form and our old form, as well as including all the new information there um, about R plus. And you can see our communications team, they did an awesome job with these forms. The deadline date is in red, it's at the top, it's in bold, and you can see the options are clear. I want to participate and I want to opt out of R plus. So once these people, once we receive a transfer from the system, we are going to be mailing these to these members. And earlier I mentioned that there was a 3-letter process with the old R plus election form and the old R plus election process, but it's a little different now, excuse me, with these opt-out participation forms. Through this process, we'll be sending only 2 reminders to members, because we found throughout the years that that middle or that second letter was really ineffective and people were not responding to it. So we narrowed it down to the 2 elections. However, a huge difference in this process is that now we're emailing members to let them know that they're receiving a ballot in the mail and that they should be on the lookout for it. And if they don't see it, the form is available in their version of MyTRS. So if they ever lose the form, they can log in, they can download and print the form and mail it to us with their wet signature. It has all of their information pre-populated on there, and they should send it to us. One thing that I want to point out though, and the change is coming soon, is that on part 2 it says that you've adjusted the rate accordingly depending on the member bringing you this form. However, that is going to change. The member can bring this form to you to acknowledge that you've received it. However, you should give that form back to the member, and if any rate change happens, we will send an email to change the rate and just to let you know that they're at the incorrect rate. Another thing I forgot to mention is that another part of this process is that if a member is not currently contributing at 11% and they're at a lower rate, we are notifying and letting them know. So if they elect in, they'll know that there's some money that they would have to owe to the system and that their rate would have to be changed to the flat 11%. Does anyone have any questions on the new R plus election process?
No, Dave, no questions on the new process.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, part 4, the elimination of the election for transfers with prior membership service that begins on or after 7/1/2022. So another important part of the new R plus law is that eventually these elections will be eliminated. So for members, members will be mandated into R plus just like all other new hires with no prior public service in a retirement system. So like newly hired members, if they don't meet the requirements for R plus at the time of retirement, they will not receive a refund of the difference between the 11% and the lower rate that they had at their other system. So in order for someone to fall into this category, they would have had to establish public membership on or after 7/1/2022. Doesn't matter what board they establish the membership in, just as long as they establish public service on or after 7/1/2022 and they become a member of the MTRS, they are mandated into R plus. They don't have a choice. So they should just be at the 11%. So like I mentioned on the previous slide, for a lot of people, you're going to take 11% as a new hire. However, you should be checking their rates in the roster section of MyTRS to make sure that their rate is correct. And one thing I wanted to add when it comes to being mandated into R plus, being at 11%, I had a member email me just earlier today because she was upset that she's mandated at 11% and she wants to be at a lower rate. When it comes to these rates, we have to follow Chapter 32, which is the retirement law for the state. And depending on when someone establishes service, that's just what their rate is in the system. So she's upset that she's not getting the difference between the 11% and the 9+2, which she thought she should have had. It turns out in her case, she took a refund of her account because she was at a lower rate, established membership after 7/1 of 2001, and she wanted a refund of her money. But like these members that are eventually just going to be mandated into the program, there's no refund. And looking at the percentage charts, there are members that could be 7+2, 8+2, 9+2. It's just what their rate is in the system. So, I could be equally as upset that someone's at 7+2 while I'm at 9+2 and we're going to get the same retirement benefit. But that's just how the pension system is structured. And Massachusetts has one of the best pension plans in the country, so we have to be doing something right. But it's just important to know that if they're mandated, that's it. That's their rate. That's their regular retirement. So just to quickly go over the 3 different groups that we covered today, we have this chart here. This is available on our website. Again, if you want to download the PowerPoint, you'll always have access to this. But that first row up top, if you have someone that established MTRS membership between 7/1/01 and 6/30 of 2022, and the MTRS received a transfer from another retirement system within that same window of time, and we did not receive a response to that person's election, and that election would have been as of 12/31/2022, because the law changed after that. They would be included in this special one-time election opportunity that we have going on right now. And that election period ends Friday, 6/30/2023. If they don't respond by that date, they will not participate in our plus. And one thing with this election deadline is that it's strict. There's no provision in there for people that are going through a hardship, or if someone gets sick the last week of the election and they procrastinate and they don't get the election in on time, they're not in retirement plus if they don't respond by the deadline date. So if they're mailing in ballots, it needs to be postmarked by 6/30/2023, or if they're making the election online, it has to be done prior to midnight of that day, because if they don't make the election, they are out. So it's important that they make that election. Then we have the next group of people in that middle row that are part of the new R Plus election. So if someone establishes membership on or after 7/1/2001, with service starting in another system prior to 7/1/2022, and the MTRS receives their transfer on or after 7/1/2022, the member will automatically be enrolled in R Plus unless they opt out within 180 days. So if they don't want to be in R Plus, it's really important that they get that form to opt out. If the member ends up participating in R Plus, whether they elect in or they don't respond and default in, and they don't meet the requirements for R Plus at the time of retirement, they'll receive a refund of the excess contributions between R Plus and that lower contribution rate. Then we have the last group of people where the election is eliminated, and that's the last line. So if anyone establishes public service credit on or public service on or after 7/1/2022, with service starting in another retirement system on or after 7/1/2022, and the transfer comes in after that date because they established service after that date, They are mandated into R plus. They don't get an election. 11% is just the rate for that person, and they would not get a refund of the difference between the 11 and the rate that they had at their previous system. Does anyone have any questions on the people that are mandated in, or the overview that we just did?
Hi, Dave. We don't have any questions specifically on that. I do have one question that I can take. The question is, will we receive a copy of this presentation afterwards? Yes, we are recording this presentation and we'll post a video to our website later this afternoon, along with the slides. And we will send out an email to every person who registered for this presentation, and you'll receive that probably this afternoon or by early tomorrow morning. Additionally, because we don't have a lot of questions coming in, we are going to stay on after the presentation for 5 to 10 minutes. If people have any questions at all, you just feel free to type them into the Q&A and we'll be here to answer them for you. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. That's Scott Olson, our Director of Communications. Okay, part 5, R plus resources for employers and members. So as I mentioned earlier, you can go to our website. Right on the homepage there, you can see our brand new R plus logo with the link to our R plus Resource Center. Our Resource Center has a lot of information there. We have brief videos on just the changes for R plus, the overview videos. We have a special election video. We have all of our member webcasts that we've done. There's a decision tree or links to help make a decision when it comes to the special election. Members can request a replacement ballot via email, and you can see the email address down below. It's retirementplus@trb.state.ma.us. And before we request a replacement ballot, we will verify the eligibility before we send the request, just because there are so many members emailing us and some people that aren't part of the election that are trying to get a ballot to be part of the election. And while I have this on my mind now, and I remember this, is that members should not be sharing their ballots, because we've had cases where a member didn't want to be in, or they didn't care about it. They gave it to somebody else. The other person made the election, and after they made the election, I guess it didn't feel right to them because it said that the person's name had made an election. So it's really important that the person just does not share their information. They keep their ballot. Don't share it with anyone else, because it only belongs to that person. It only belongs to the people that we included on that list to your district. It doesn't include anyone else for this election. So if people go to our R plus Resource Center, we have an R plus decision tree, and you can see here up at the top there are 3 tabs: a flat 11%, 9+2, and then 8+2. And we'll go into the details with each of these tabs. So you can see here a flat 11%. So if someone elects in, they'll continue to pay 11% on all future wages, and there's no retroactive costs. They won't owe any money. They would just be in Retirement Plus. For someone that is at 9+2 when they elect in, it'll be 11% on all future wages, and the retroactive cost will be $600 a year for each year of MTRS service. So we talked about the difference between 9+2 earlier. The monetary difference is $600 a year. That's just how it works out based on the math. And it can be hard to determine how much someone would owe, because you would need to know the number of years that they were at a lower rate, and that varies for every single person. So it's not feasible for us to go in and try to calculate that for everyone. However, some people do have an idea of how long they've been contributing at a lower rate, because we might have asked for a rate change 5 years ago, and they've been at the lower rate ever since. And if we issued a refund, they would have to pay that refund back, plus all of the time that they were at the lower 9+2. So if you have 5 years of prior MTRS service at the lower rate, $600 a year for 5 years, that cost would be about $3,000. If there's 10 years of prior service at the 9+2 rate, they would owe about $6,000. And if it's 15 years, it would be $9,000. And these examples are just for illustrative purposes only. It's not for any one specific account. But once someone makes the election, once the rate has been changed and we can see that in the system, that's when we'll be able to calculate the final cost for people. Then we have the 8+2 members, and 8+2 isn't as simple as the 9+2 where it's $600 a year. However, if someone on average makes $40,000 a year, then the difference is going to be $1,000 a year. And then you can see for every $10,000 increase in salary, the amount owed increases by $100. So you can see at 50,000, it's 1,100, 60,000, it's 1,200, and so on. So that should be able to help people have an idea of how much they would owe to the system. So you can see down below, Sarah Science has 10 years of service. The average salary was 70,000. Therefore, so you can see 70,000 on the grid, $1,300 a year. At 10 years, it's about $13,000. And again, everyone's situation is different. You know, we have someone retiring now where I think they owe $30,000, and she was aware of it. She wanted to elect in, and we've seen them as high as 30,000. So it varies all over the board. So important items from today. If anyone has any questions, direct them to the MTRS. We have a special inbox designed to take questions, which is the Retirement Plus at trb.state.ma.us. And just a special shout out to Caroline Tierney, the assistant director of our unit, for really managing the inbox over the last several months and answering a lot of questions. So thank you, Carrie, for taking a lot of those emails. Everyone who received a special election is not currently in Retirement Plus. So if they were on that list and they haven't responded yet, even if they've been contributing at 11% for the last 20 years, they are still not in R+. And if they want to be in, they have to make an election to be in. If the member believes they're already in, please tell them to fill out and submit their election. Have them search for those emails from the vendor Yes Elections back on May 8th and have them submit an election. If they don't respond, they are out of R+. And at the end of this process, you know, we have 3,000 people that have elected, but you know, then again, there's close to 5,000 people that have not elected. And when it's all said and done, if they're at 11% at the end of this election and they haven't elected, then we're going to have to request for their rate to be changed to their lower contribution rate. And they're not going to be, some people may not be happy because they thought that they were in. But this is why we're here today. To let you know, and you know, with the member webcast we've had, to also let them know that they're not in Retirement Plus. They have to make an election. Don't change any rates until we notify you. Again, we did our first round back on May 18th, and we've gotten a lot of responses back from schools letting us know that they've already adjusted the rates. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for paying attention to what we've emailed you and acting on what we've asked you to do. It's a huge help in this process. And if you can, please do it on your next pay. And again, I can't say it enough. This window closes on Friday, June 30th of 2023. Paper ballots have to be postmarked by that date. or received by before midnight online of that same day in order for the ballot to be eligible for the election. If it's after that date, it's not going to count. They will not be in Retirement Plus and they will be out. They will be out of R Plus. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Dave, we do have a couple of questions. This first one's a really good one. I can actually take it. So you mentioned earlier that people get a confirmation online when they vote online, and that confirmation does say that a postcard will be in the mail within 4 to 6 weeks. So the question is, can the vendor be asked to also send that postcard to the district as our notice for their files? And while that is a good idea and a good question, that unfortunately won't work because those postcards are generic. It doesn't include the member's name, member number, or what their vote was. It is simply a generic postcard to every member who voted, confirming that they voted and at a high level outlining the next steps of the election. So thank you for that question, but unfortunately, that is not going to be the answer. And we'll talk and think internally about the best way to address that going forward. The next question says, I can make my rate changes effective on the 5/25 payroll. However, should I wait until June to process payments for May? Oh, sorry, until June to process. So payments for May are at the same rate, not one deduction at 9 plus 2 and one at 11.
So that's a great question, and I understand what you're asking because you'd want to have a clean month of a one rate versus the other. However, if you can change it on May 25th, go ahead and do that just because when you're reporting it through my TRS, there are separate pay dates for those pays. So we'll be able to see that rate change, and it'll just allow us to be able to calculate any final amounts sooner because we wouldn't have to wait for the June report to be released versus the May report. So it would be very helpful to have it done on the last payroll of May if you can do that.
Great, thanks, Dave. And that appears to be all of the questions that have come in through the chat.
Okay. So again, everyone, thank you for attending today. Thank you for all the help you've given us over the last several months. Without your efforts, we really wouldn't be here today. The election's not over yet, but I would say that it's been successful and it'll end up being successful. There's a lot of work being done by a lot of the various groups involved in this process, and you play an important part of that. So thank you for all your help. Again, if you have any questions, you can email us at the Retirement Plus inbox or visit our R Plus Resource Center online for more information. Thank you and have a great day.